This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans. It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. Wrestler Ox Baker was a charismatic worker who could have fit in well during any era of professional wrestling. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at Ox Baker more than just a pretty face. Did the man who became known as Ox Baker step through a time portal from centuries ago? While the big man looked like he might have ridden along the eastern steppes as a horseman for Genghis Khan, that wasn't the case. Although he would cut a path of destruction through wrestling, equally as terrifying. No, Douglas Allen Baker was born on April 19, 1934 in Missouri. The future professional wrestler and actor competed in amateur wrestling and Golden Gloves boxing. Standing 6 foot 5 inches tall and weighing over 300 pounds, he had the size and physique for the sport of kings. However, what drove Baker into the grappling game? Baker broke into wrestling for the simplest of reasons: to take care of his young family. In a 2000 interview with Orlando Sentinel, he recalled, "I wrestled my first match in 1964. I got married at a young age and had 2 kids. I needed to make some money, and I knew some guys who were doing pretty good on the pro wrestling circuit in Iowa. Like many rookie wrestlers, the pay wasn't good, and Baker resorted to side hustles to make ends meet, including taking tires off broken down cars on the highway and selling them to automobile dealers. Surprisingly, he played a babyface initially. He worked as the Ox, but over time, he cultivated the look and persona that made him into a draw as a monster heel. Indeed, once promoters came to their senses, they began booking him as the fearsome heel Ox Baker, who threatened to take out any babyface he stepped into the ring with. 2 strokes of bad luck for his opponents proved beneficial for Baker, creating an urban legend that persists in the wrestling world and even pop culture to this day. The finisher that finishes for real. Although Baker could have gotten by on his look alone, the big man's finisher and some fortuitous circumstances, well, at least fortuitous for him, led to the kind of publicity a wrestler can't make up. Ox Baker began using the Heart Punch, the same finisher used by Stan the Man Stasiak. Wrestling legend has it that Stasiak protested, and Baker changed his move to the Hurt Punch. He could have called it the Love Tap, and fans still would have cringed when he used it. Why? During the early 1970s, 2 opponents died after taking the Heart Punch. This was in the age of kayfabe, and fans were understandably worried that their favorite babyface might go out feet first after a match with the Ox. Baker would recall the 2 wrestlers' unfortunate passings. First, there was Alberto Torres in 1971, and then Ray Gunkel about a year later. Torres had a bad heart, and it just gave out. Gunkel, who had a problem with high blood pressure, went to an all-you-can-eat buffet before our match. He ate 12 pieces of fried chicken, and his heart burst when he tried to pick me up. This being professional wrestling in the early 1970s, there was no way at least one promoter was going to leave money on the table by saying the death was an accident. One promoter, who shall remain nameless, booked a bout between Ox and Alberto's real-life brother Ramon, with Ramon supposedly looking for revenge. The confusion over Alberto Torres and Ray Gunkel's deaths forever linked Ox Baker with the 2 wrestlers' unfortunate demise. In a pre-internet age where kayfabe was still enforced, promoters had no problem spinning a tale of Baker's Heart Punch taking 2 lives in the ring, and the story grew, adding to Baker's already considerable mystique. Baker's Heart Punch would even be incorporated into stipulation matches, such as when he battled Fritz von Erich in a Heart Punch vs. Iron Claw match. Ox competed around the world during his career, winning titles abroad, including in New Zealand's All-Star Wrestling, NWA New Zealand, and Australia's World Championship Wrestling. Baker piled up singles and tag team gold in North America, including Championship Wrestling from Florida, Southeastern Championship Wrestling, Big Time Wrestling, NWA Hollywood, Stampede Wrestling, and many others. With a career dating from the 1960s into the 1980s, it's no surprise Ox fought many of wrestling's biggest stars. Bruiser Brody, Carlos Colon, the Briscoe Brothers, Jack and Jerry, and the Sheik were just a few of the legends he worked with. While Ox usually worked as a heel, there were times when he crossed over onto the babyface side, perhaps wanting to atone for his many crimes against humanity in the ring. One such crime was when he drove wrestling fans in Cleveland, Ohio to riot after he laid out big man Ernie Ladd. Baker drove heart punch after heart punch into Ladd's chest, with a veteran grappler selling it like he was on his way to the big squared circle in the sky. Fortunately for Ox, he made it to the backstage area without being mobbed. While Baker enjoyed success, he never reached the financial success of the top stars of his age. We'd get about $35 to $50 a night depending on the attendance. It was barely enough to get us to the next town for the next show. I wrestled for 25 years, and only once did I make more than $50,000 a year. In some ways, Ox Baker was a man ahead of his time. He knew how to play off his name and the mystique surrounding himself. He was known for wearing t-shirts that read, "I like to hurt people," and "the great heart puncher." If Baker worked in contemporary wrestling, he believes he would have fared much better financially. It was a great run, and I had a lot of fun. I just wish I could have stuck around long enough to cash in on some of the big money being thrown around today. However, Baker discovered that wrestling wasn't the only place for a man of his size, talent, and charisma. Hollywood calls. Wrestlers have appeared in films for decades, with filmmakers relying on these colorful characters to round out their films. Such would be the case with Ox Baker, who had several film roles that relied upon his intimidating appearance. Ox's best-known role is that of Slag in the film Escape from New York, where he portrays a gladiator who fights the film's protagonist, Snake Plissken. Baker also had a notable role as a fighter in Jackie Chan's film The Big Brawl. As memorable as Ox's film roles were, nothing compares to his appearance on the classic daytime game show The Price is Right. Ox appeared on a January 1981 episode, winning a wall clock and advancing to the show's second phase. The interaction between Ox and host Bob Barker is priceless and worth checking out on YouTube. Rather than spoiling the show, check the highlights out for yourself. Ox also ventured into other areas, including working as a manager in professional wrestling. The Anything But Gentle Giant was hands down the most intimidating looking manager in pro wrestling, although fans familiar with Harley Race's real-life tough guy credentials know he was no one to mess with. Baker capitalized on his years cooking meals for himself and his fellow wrestlers by compiling a cookbook. Ox Baker's Cookbook, a tribute to the fallen warriors, was notable both for its 50 recipes and the 50 stories he told about various wrestlers, many of whom he cooked for. Sadly, the book is long out of print. In addition to being one of wrestling's standout heels, Baker was considered a standout guy for his devotion to wrestling fans. As noted in the Pro Wrestling Stories article, Ox Baker, the endearing heel who loved to hurt people. Baker's willingness to interact with fans while working as a heel led to him getting heat amongst some of his fellow wrestlers. But he didn't care. Fan conventions routinely invited the highly sought-after Ox Baker to help draw a crowd and work the room. And who wouldn't love speaking with Ox Baker, even for just a few minutes? Ox Baker's work was recognized by his induction into several Halls of Fame, including the Memphis Hall of Fame, the NWA Hall of Fame, and the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Baker was also honored by his peers in the Cauliflower Alley Club. What do you think of Ox Baker's career as a wrestler and in Hollywood? Share your thoughts in the comment section and let us know if there's any videos you'd like Wrestling's Greatest Moments to cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.